So now I would like to introduce our speaker for today. Brian Tan is a senior product designer at First Circle, a fintech startup that provides business loans to SMEs in the Philippines. He's also the co-founder of Effective Altruism Philippines, the parent organization of EA Blue. EA Philippines is a community of Filipinos interested in effective altruism, a global movement of people figuring out how to maximize their social impact with their career and resources. Brian took 6 internships at various startups while studying in Ateneo and graduated in 2019 with a degree in IT entrepreneurship. So everyone, please join me in welcoming our speaker, Brian Tan. Woo.
Yeah, so hey everyone, thank you, Kirsten, for that introduction. I'm really happy to be giving to have this opportunity to give this talk on career planning for social impact. So I've actually read through a lot of your career plans, and it's very exciting that a lot of you are planning to enter the development sector. Some are even thinking of entering the public sector, and others have very interesting plans on entering the corporate or CSR world. And I'm just glad to see so many people planning their career already from a social impact lens. So who this talk is for? So this talk is for people who want to make the most social impact they can with their careers. And it's ideally for people who are open-minded and not set on a fixed career path. So yeah, this is more focused on trying to maximize that social impact. It won't focus too much yet on a specific sector or how to get a specific job. It's more thinking on the long-term considerations about how to make a large social impact. And with that in mind, ideally it's for people who are open-minded and are willing to consider different career paths. And some caveats before I start about this talk content is that this is only one framework to plan your career. So the advice here may or may not fit with your values and goals. And you can always get other perspectives on how to plan your career. This doesn't have to be the only one. And the second one is planning for a high impact career isn't easy, but that shouldn't stop us from aiming for it. So, planning for a career in general is hard enough when trying to figure out what job to get or apply for, and even landing a job, especially during this time. And so trying to incorporate social impact makes things a bit more complicated, but that shouldn't stop us from aiming for it, at least, because we can do a lot of good by trying to aim for a large social impact. So here's a short outline for the talk, where it's going to be divided into 3 parts for the next 30 minutes or so. The first part is why you should aim and plan for a high impact career. So just to make sure we have an understanding of the reasons. The second is how do we define and measure impact? And the third is how to plan for a high impact career actually. So the first part is why you should aim and plan for a high impact career. And so the first reason is that research shows that you will be happier at your job and in life if you plan for a high impact career, or if you have a high impact career. And I know a lot of you are already interested in having a high impact career, but just want to underscore these reasons. So the EA organization 80,000 Hours, which does research to help people find fulfilling and high impact careers and help people enter these roles. A few years ago, they did this research on what makes for a dream job, and they found 6 factors for it. So these 6 are engaging work, work that helps others, work you're good at, supportive colleagues, a lack of major negatives, and work that fits with your personal life. So these were some of the factors that I actually put in the sample in the career plan worksheet. And actually a lot of you mostly were just using it, which is good as well, because they are what make up a dream job. But the one they want to underscore is the work that helps others, because they found that in other studies, even jobs that have all the other factors, but lack on when the person in that survey says, I don't think my job makes the world a better place, they were a lot more likely also to not rank high in their job satisfaction. And the second reason to plan and aim for a high impact career is we have a privilege and duty to help those less fortunate than us. So most of us here are from Ateneo and come from very privileged backgrounds. And I just want to do a quick survey first, just to do a bit of engagement as well. So I want to ask a question and then have people reply the answer in Zoom chat. So I want to quiz people on, so if you live alone here in the Philippines and earn 20,000 per month, what do you think, what percent of the world are you richer than with this amount? So can people type in their guesses? Even Fassies can guess if they want. Cool. I think Tanya's guess of 95 skewed everyone up. Just kidding. But yeah, it's good that, so these answers are actually very close. And so the answer is, yeah, you would be richer than 84% of the world, even just living alone and earning 20,000 pesos per month. And yeah, that's just because there's still a lot of poverty in other countries, even in our own country. And 20,000 per month might not be a lot, but at least we can cover basic needs. And most of us here through our careers will be earning a lot more than this, hopefully. And so we can use use our skills and our resources to help those that, the other 84% that don't have it as good as us. And so the next reason is you can make 10 to 1,000 times more positive impact than other people if you specifically plan and aim for a high impact career. Because most people, they think of social impact as an afterthought in their career. Most of the time, they're thinking about what would make me happy in my career, what would earn the most, what would please my parents, but they're not really asking themselves, how can I make the most social impact? And if you really focus on specific opportunities, these opportunities can make 10 to 1,000 times more impact. This could be said of Superman in this comic example, where Superman, we often see him in comic books. He saves lives of individual people, maybe from crime or saving them from a falling building. But if he actually thought about it, maybe he could have transported a lot of food to starving people, or plowed farmlands in impoverished countries. And these could have saved a lot more people. And similarly, in our careers, we can think of unorthodox or uncommon career paths that just do a lot of social impact, because maybe we prioritize the right intervention, or we were able to scale up something very important that improved a lot of lives. So this second part now is how we define and measure social impact. So since we're aiming for this, we need to know how to define it and how to measure it. So 80,000 hours, and which I agree with their definition, is about the number of people whose lives you improve and how much you improve their lives by, as the definition of social impact. So you can also broaden this to not just some people, but also other animals and other living creatures. And so the idea here is, for your social impact, you can increase your social impact through two main dimensions. You could either increase the number of people you help, or you could help the same number of people, but help them to a greater degree. And so you guys might be asking, how do we measure if we are improving people's lives? And you can do that through measuring these types of outcomes. So the first one is health outcomes, for example, which you can think about, how many lives did you save because you entered this career, or because you made this donation, or extra healthy years did you add? So, maybe you entered a career in a nonprofit that does micronutrient supplementation in rural areas, and you helped improve their operations and they now reach, 1,000 families instead of just 500 families. And then maybe those micronutrients helped save the lives of 10% of the children of the families you cater to. So you can try to quantitatively assess, how many lives did you save or how many extra years did you add. The second could be how much healthier and better quality are the years they live. So maybe you donated to this nonprofit that does cataract surgeries, and then which helps prevent blindness in certain people. And so by donating to them, these people don't have to have blindness and can then have better quality lives. The next set of outcomes are happiness outcomes. So this could be increasing people's life satisfaction long-term or people's day-to-day happiness long-term. So this is where a lot of mental health interventions aim to improve, like through simple mental health interventions. We could take someone hopefully who's depressed, who would rate their life satisfaction at 3 or 4 out of 10 to something at like 5 or 6 or 7 out of 10. And then the last set of outcomes are economic outcomes. So how much more are these people that your beneficiaries that you help through your career donations, how much more are they earning now than before? And this is important because they, with more money, they can then achieve goals and dreams they have, whether it's traveling locally or globally, or maybe sending their children to good schools. And so now that I've told you about, okay, you could either be helping more people or helping the same number of people to a larger degree, there's 3 things to keep in mind on social impact. These 3 things are, the first one is that we want to make sure that all lives are equal, and that we're not focusing on, like, we're not saying that, oh, people of this race, this religion, this gender, or people from a certain country are more important to help than from another country or another. So what we want is that, we should, helping lives should all be treated equally, and we should be open to helping people even in other countries, and as much as we want to help people in our own country. And this also links to helping people from future generations. So if all lives are equal, this also means ideally that someone living 100 years from now, it's as important to make sure that person has a happy and good life than someone today, because they would still be a human and they would still have an equal life to us. And so that's why things like climate change are important to solve, because this also helps us save the lives or improve the lives of future generations. The second thing is that our time and money is limited. So we should find the best ways to do good with them. So yeah, like we only have 80,000 hours in our career and limited money to give. And so we should really try to find out which are the best ways to do good with these. Because, if we only have a set resources and we could either choose it to help 5 people or to help 2 people, we should really think of, okay, yeah, we should help 5 people because that 5 people is as equal as, and is more than helping 2 people. And then the third thing is on counterfactual impact. So this is, these are all concepts that we follow in the effective altruism community. And counterfactual impact is the impact you've caused versus what would have happened otherwise. This concept might be a bit tricky to understand. So I'll go through 2 examples to make this clearer. So, a career path a lot of people are into is entrepreneurship, starting a business so that, and then the social impact of this would be, oh, we're creating jobs for people and helping people have a livelihood. So let's say you created a successful new restaurant similar to KFC that now has 10 branches and employs 200 people. So you would think your impact is, oh, cool, I gave jobs to 200 people and these people are, quite happy, and maybe these people, have better lives now. Yeah, I want to do a quick quiz then on Zoom chat again. So what do you guys think was this person's counterfactual impact in this example? And you can try to make any guess, even facilitators. Whoops, 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 whoops. Okay. Yeah, so actually, okay, Kate put an interesting thing here, which is about carbon footprint as well. But yeah, so in terms of counterfactual impact, yeah, you have to really think of all the impacts of what you do, and also, okay, what would have happened if you didn't start this restaurant, for example. And so I'll just go to the counterfactual impact, which is that potentially that, it could just be that it's zero new jobs created, because these jobs, maybe the people who worked at your restaurant could have also worked at other restaurants and also earned similar amounts and also potentially be happy. So it's not so clear that you know starting this business is as impactful as if you didn't. Another example is, let's say you were hired by the Philippine Red Cross to improve their operations, to increase their COVID-19 testing capacity. And maybe because you're such a good management, engineering, and operations research student, you're able to analyze their operations and make suggestions that a few months later, or you're able to say that, oh, their capacity increased by 10% thanks to your recommendations. So you think your impact is, oh, I improved testing capacity by 10%. But your counterfactual impact, this actually depends on how good the second best candidate for the role you were hired for was. So maybe that person the second best person who they were about to hire was like the second best person in the management engineering or industrial engineering class. And that person would have improved it by 5% as well. So your counterfactual impact, meaning, okay, if I didn't take this role, this would have still increased by 5%. So your counterfactual impact is 5%, which is still good, but it's still something to keep in mind that there's these opportunity costs that to what we do. Yeah, so we'll now go to the third part, which is how to plan for a high impact career. Kirsten, could I quickly ask how much time I have left? Sorry, I didn't hear that.
15 minutes.
Cool. Yeah, so we can now go into the actual steps of planning for a high impact career. So I tried to break this down into 3 steps. And this is a lot based from the content of 80,000 hours. But I tried to simplify things for this audience, which is that the first one is you want to research on the problems you want to help solve. The second is ideate and rank career paths that help solve the problem. And the third one is you want to explore multiple paths cheaply and easily before focusing on one. And I guess this is in contrast to a typical career planning process where most people just focus on the second step immediately, where, okay, let me think of actual career paths to follow. And then in the third part, maybe they're not even doing that much exploring. They're just entering whatever they thought was the best path for them, or whatever the best path their parents thought were for them. So let me walk you through each of these steps again. So the first step is, of course, to research on the problems. And so I'm a product designer at First Circle, and in product design or in design thinking, this is what we do, right? We always start with the problems you're trying to solve, because different problems will just, if you focus on the right problem, you can make a lot more impact on there if you have a better personal fit for it, or if the problem you chose was actually bigger and something you could make more impact in. And there's a framework that the Effective Altruism community uses to help you determine what problems to prioritize solving. And so this is a framework of ranking problems or rating problems based on their scale, neglectedness, and solvability. So on scale, this is about thinking about how many people and how badly are they affected by this problem. The second one is neglectedness. So how much talent and funding is focused on this? And neglectedness is actually probably the most important part of this framework. And this is because uh, there's usually this concept of diminishing returns, that the more people and the more money that is being spent on a problem, the more the low-hanging fruit or the easy opportunities to make an impact have already been achieved, and therefore you as an added person would not be able to make as much impact on this problem. Um, and the last one is solvability. So will adding more people and funding lead to progress in this area? Yeah, so I've gone ahead and tried to, in EA Philippines, we've done research on, okay, what are problems that rank high on this framework that actually Filipinos can have a good shot at helping solve. And one of these is, of course, eradicating local poverty. And I'll do a quick survey again on Zoom chat, which is to ask how what percent of the Philippines lives under extreme poverty, which we're defining as under 35 pesos a day, which is about 1.9 US dollars in purchasing power parity. Yeah. So what percent? So we have peers with 14, 25, 30, 22, 60. Uh, okay. Yeah. So in terms of that specific number of extreme poverty, it's actually lower than what you guys think, but it's 6.1% of Filipinos that live below this extreme poverty line of 34 pesos per day. But of course, like if you're thinking more on the national Philippine poverty line, which is higher than this 34 pesos per day, it's something more like 20%. And a lot of Filipinos would still be, in our thinking, that we would consider them poor, but just not on this extreme poverty line of 34 pesos per day. And 39% of the poor live in Mindanao, even if only 25% of the Philippine population is there. And yeah, Tanya made a good point here where poverty can easily be increasing because of the pandemic. And so that thing about Mindanao is just to think about, okay, what's the geographical, where should we focus on this problem geographically? And then in terms of neglectedness, we'd rate it as medium. So the Philippine government does spend a lot to solve this, of course. But what's interesting is through our research, we found that the Philippine government has only spent 0.7% of GDP on social assistance, which is below 1.5%, the average of 1.5% of other low and middle income countries. And the Philippines only received $5 per person of net official development aid from other countries in 2018. And this is a lot lower than other countries, and even countries that are richer than us got more development aid. And in terms of solvability, it's quite high in we think, because interventions like cash transfers or livelihood programs can lift people out of extreme poverty. And there are many NGOs focusing on the poor in the Philippines, some of which are highly effective, and they can do a lot more good with funding or talent. And so EA Philippines actually is trying to do research on which local charities are most cost effective to donate to, and therefore highly impactful. And we think that we can find a few of these that could do a lot of good because, and that they're still funding constrained. So another problem that ranks high on this framework is improving farm animal welfare, specifically locally if you are a Filipino. So in terms of scale, neglectedness, and solvability, the scale is also high. So we have 1.2 billion chickens slaughtered here in the Philippines, and we're the 14th in the world in this. And we're also the 10th in the world in fish production. And it's not normal for us to be talking about farm animal welfare issues, but the truth is that these animals can still feel pain, And the welfare of farm animals globally, but also locally, is probably, like in other countries, it's well documented that it's bad. And probably it's also bad here in the Philippines. An example of this is that 84% of our local eggs, the white eggs that we usually eat, is comes from battery caged hens. And this is a screenshot I took from a YouTube video about the Philippine hen battery cage farm, where yeah, these chickens live in very small cages for the farms to maximize profits. But this makes their welfare really horrible as well. And so that's why in other countries these are now being banned. And the neglectedness is high. So there's this even higher, of course, than poverty, because no local organizations are working directly on improving farm animal welfare. Most of the organizations are focused on companion animals like pets and dogs and cats, but none are really thinking about these farm animals. And the solvability, I guess, is medium, because promoting consumption of cage-free eggs or convincing food companies to purchase cage-free, this has been done in many other countries, and potentially this could be tried out in the Philippines. Also, plant-based diets are getting more popular globally and locally. So, but maybe by promoting this, we can slowly lessen the number of farm animals as well. Okay, yes, Pierce made something about, tying to vegan advocacies. Cool. So the second step is ideating and ranking career paths that help solve the problem. So hopefully, you've done your research on which problems you want to focus on. And so, as part of your career plans, you guys listed some problems you're interested in. Hopefully you could get this, you could try ranking them. Which ones do I really care the most about? And even try thinking of them from a scale, neglectedness, and solvability standpoint. So even just getting the problem right is its own thing that could take you multiple months or multiple years. But I guess in parallel to that, you can ideate and rank career paths that help solve the problem. So there's 3 possible bottlenecks. So when you're thinking about your career path, in order to make a large social impact, you're trying to find, how can I use my career to solve a key bottleneck in this problem that I care about? And usually there are 3 types of bottlenecks in a given problem. It could be intervention research, which is which intervention should we implement or fund. It could be implementation. So we already know what intervention we want to implement. We just need to implement and track it well. Or funding, do organizations have room for more funding, and therefore maybe you could donate to it or help them fundraise more money. Let me just check the chat. Cool. So and here are just some ideas on careers to solve these bottlenecks. So you can think of, for intervention research, maybe there's government research roles, which they help determine what should the government put more budget behind. There's academic research on, like, okay, which, maybe there's the economics departments in universities that help do economic research. There's think tank research roles, independent research. And then for implementation, these could be admin and operations roles in the government. You could be a charity entrepreneur, which is something we're very excited about in EA Philippines, actually, is that we'd love to see more people start new charities on interventions that are already proven, whether in mental health, local poverty, animal welfare, and really try to scale these up. You could be a project manager, operations manager, a data analyst, software engineer. And then in terms of funding, maybe you could be in a corporate foundation, trying to raise more money from the corporation's employees, or be in NGO fundraising roles. Maybe you'd want to be a volunteer for a charity, helping them do financial analysis and fundraising. Maybe you'd want to be a web developer to make a website that helps generate donations to this charity. Maybe you want to be a marketing or communications manager, or maybe you could do earning to give, which is this concept popularized in the EA movement of using the profit you earn from your job to donate anywhere from 1 to 10% or even more into the causes you care about. And to aid in your decision of career paths, what you can do is try to make this, don't rely on your gut, because it's very hard to trust your gut. It's better to first do it quantitatively to aid this alongside just your intuition. So here's a sample template that you could make on Google Sheets or Excel, which is you can think of the criteria that matter to you. So maybe it could just be the 6 criteria of 80,000 hours. So for example, maybe the 6 criteria that matter to you, and these are 6 criteria that matter to me, are impactful work, work you're good at, interesting work, compensation, career capital gained, and supportive colleagues. And you can even give weighting. So here at above each criteria is how much you would weight how important this criteria is to you. So if you really cared about impact, you would rate this the highest at 30%, and you could rate the others similarly. And so here are, for example, some long-term paths, and you could kind of think of me as an example here, where okay, a long-term path maybe is something. So ideally, you're thinking about the long-term paths first, where you're thinking about something you'll do 5 or 10 years after grad. So maybe you want to be a VP of design at company X, or maybe you want to be an executive director of a charity, or maybe you want to be a monitoring and evaluation specialist for different charities. So after thinking about these long-term paths, you can then start asking around people from those paths, or maybe even just thinking, okay, how impactful do I think this is? How good will I be at the work? And start rating based on that. And so this is easier to do for short-term paths, where, okay, you're really trying to figure out which first internship to take, or which first job to take. So for example, let's say there are these 3 roles that you're considering as your first job out of college. So maybe you want to work as an associate at ID Insight, which is a data-driven consultancy helping the government and NGOs. Or maybe you want to be an executive assistant at NEDA for an important secretary or important person in NEDA. Or maybe you want to be an assistant brand manager at PNG, which a lot of people in Ateneo and college aim for. And so you can rate these on these criteria after investigating a bit more. Maybe you try to find out what's the compensation like, how interesting, what type of work is it, how interesting do I think it will be, and then you rate it across these criteria. And so, yeah, of course, this would be subjective, but this is just one way to help you get at, okay, what are the roles that rank well on this framework? And so what's important here is the weighting you put can matter a lot. So, and this weighting can, be tied to what your values and what your priorities are. So for example, this person X cares a lot about impact, and they also care a lot about, okay, I want it to be work I'm good at. So this person already did good research, and I think these 2 roles would be more impactful than this for-profit role, especially if you think of counterfactual impact. And then, but in terms of compensation, I think many of us know that PNG would pay a lot higher than a role at the development sector or a role in the government. But because this is only 15%, this means if you multiply these weightings, these 2 roles would still come up on top. Meanwhile, for another person, let's say person Y, who maybe they have the exact same ratings, but then they change the weightings. So let's say compensation is made into 40% and impactful work is 10%, and maybe this is because they have to pay bills for their family in the short term. So being working at PNG could easily rank higher because of that. So yeah, the third step is exploring multiple paths cheaply and easily before focusing on one. And yeah, I can show this as an example from my own career where I did 6 internships in college testing various roles in companies. What I knew is that, oh, I wanted to work at startups. And I was lucky to be able to, even in my first year of college, do a sales internship. I realized I didn't like sales. So I went back to the same company and tried to get a web development internship. I realized I didn't like coding so many hours in front of a computer just all day. So I tried doing a product design internship, which I ended up really enjoying. And then the other internships after that were all related to design and user experience. Um, and that's what helped me gain a lot of career capital or expertise that I could then land my current job in First Circle. So I was able to test out a lot of different companies, like realizing, okay, maybe I don't really want to work for an agency, or I don't really want to work at a big company like Shopee, and being able to find something like First Circle, which is like a medium-sized startup that I really enjoy in. One regret I have though is that I didn't explore widely enough in terms of sectors. Like I just worked at all startups. I wish I tried doing an internship in an NGO or in the government just to see what it's like and build connections there as well. Um, and so, you know, I had another friend as well who he tried out 2 internships during the summer after third year, which is when a lot of people have time to do internships to test 2 paths, you know, one working in the government at DOF or one working at Shopee in a for-profit role. And he realized there that, okay, he wanted to test out this for-profit and being in the for-profit world. And he ended up liking the DOF internship more. And that's why he ended up working at DOF after graduating. Um, and so here's just some specific tips to explore paths. Um, you can list and answer key uncertainties in these options by networking with and interviewing people in those paths. You can connect with people in these orgs to learn what it's like and whether they're in need of someone with your skills. You can apply to these orgs to be an intern to test if you're good at it and if you enjoy it. And ideally, you focus on testing reversible short-term paths first. So maybe you can test for-profit ones first because they say it's usually easier to transition from working in for-profit to non-profit than the other way around. And maybe instead of committing to a master's, maybe you're just taking short courses first to test out, okay, do I like studying again? And yeah, just trying to think of things in maybe short 2 month or 1 month internships or short projects before trying to commit to something that's like 2 years or 5 years. And then reviewing and adjusting your career plan every few months. And just some last few tips is that don't be afraid to try out multiple sectors, orgs, and roles. I'm almost at, this is pretty much the last slide of the talk now. And yeah, this is something I wish I'd done more, where that I wish I tried out these roles in NGOs or the government. The second one is find ways to build useful and applicable career capital. So career capital is, yeah, this concept of what are the connections, the credentials, or the skills that you can use to help you land a job in the future. Of course, you want to take care of yourself and your mental health. You don't want to overwork yourself. But potentially you could juggle 20 hours a week doing studying and also 15 hours a week doing an internship during school, and just cutting down on other org stuff so that you could do an internship. And then the last one is staying motivated by finding a community of like-minded, impact-driven people. So for the Ateneans here, that could mean like joining EA Blue, and that's something you can do starting Rec Week in a few weeks. And then for those that are graduates or not in EA, not in Ateneo, you could message us in EA Philippines, and we could definitely add you to our Facebook group. And also, we'll have future events where you can talk with other people more who are really caring about social impact. Yeah, so here's some next steps, but that's pretty much it for this talk. So thank you.
Okay. Yay, great. Thank you, Brian, for that awesome talk. It was definitely great for us to think more deeply about our careers and how we can use them to be as impactful as possible. So now we're just gonna start with our Q&A. I'm already seeing some questions in Slido, so I'm gonna be sharing my screen. We have 10 to 15 minutes for a Q&A. So we'll start, I guess, with the top questions. But I did see some patterns also with the question. So Brian, maybe we can start by this question. What are your tips for those whose families are stringent on their careers? Or also to just mesh another question with that, what are your tips for factors that limit careers such as income or family?
Sorry, could you say the second part again?
Oh yeah. What are your tips or thoughts on other factors like family that limit careers?
Yeah, good question. So, yeah, I think this is hard, right, in the Philippines um, where our families can have very high expectations on what career plans we should get. Maybe it's like working as a doctor, an engineer, a lawyer. These are typical ones. Um, I think it's just a process on how much you think they can budge on those things, and how much you care about your own priorities. Because if you really cared about making a big social impact, you would be willing to try to not follow these things that your parents set out for you. But of course, like if you're very dependent on them, then that changes things, right? So yeah, it's just trying to find this middle ground of, okay, maybe within the career paths they want for me, because even in if within a corporate role or within a being a lawyer or a doctor, there's still a lot of good you can do within those roles that our parents typically want for us, and it's finding a right balance. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for that, Brian. Okay, next question regards internships. So I see a bunch of questions on internships also. So I guess I'll just mesh this all in one. So what are your tips for applying for internships? Do you think they're more valuable than org positions? Um, and what do you think if someone can't get 6 internships or a lot of internships? Like what else could they do to explore careers? And lastly, what are your thoughts on taking internships even after graduation?
Yeah, that's Kirsty, I think it would help more if you just focus on 2 questions at a time. It's hard to
Yeah.
remember all 4. So tips on internships. So I'll answer the question first on internships versus org work. I think an internship, especially at a relevant organization that's already working on the problem you want to solve or the career path you want to enter, that is more valuable than an org work, because it's just very much closer to the actual career that you would be doing. So, org work in Ateneo, you're working with very similar people with similar backgrounds, but in an internship, you would be working with a more diverse set of people and with older people usually. And so I think that's valuable. Tips for applying. It's actually a lot having to do with just building a network and building connections. When I was in first year college trying to get my first internship, I applied in so many places, and it was like I didn't have anything in my resume that would make me stand out. But thankfully, a friend introduced me to the co-founder of Zap, and he was willing to take a chance on me on getting me as an intern. And a lot of internships kind of have to start up this way. And I think it's actually easier to apply for internships at startups or at smaller NGOs, for example, because, well, actually, I think we can focus on startups because, these big corporations, a lot of people apply to them, and it's very hard to make yourself stand out. But in startups, you can easily make a case that, okay, you really care about the startup, you really know, and you can network your way into it. Like when even when I was applying to First Circle, I made something like a loan calculator to demonstrate, hey, I can make something that I think would be valuable for First Circle's customers. This is why I'm a good designer. And this is something similar you could do for an internship potentially to make yourself stand out. So yeah, it's like applying to a lot of places, trying to, cold message people who work there. So actually, this also ties into learning more about the org. Like if you cold message people trying to learn more first about that organization, you can make the connection first before trying to apply, because then maybe you're asking such good questions that then they actually want to hire you in as an intern because you're so inquisitive.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Brian. So next question that got upvoted a lot is, would you say there's any benefit to working abroad and being high impact if they want to help the Philippines more? And also, just to tie in another question, there's one that says, if there's a social issue that one wants to focus on alleviating poverty, but has no means to move to Mindanao, would it be effective to focus on that person's current area? So yeah.
Okay, so I'll tackle the working abroad first, and I definitely think there's opportunities in working abroad, and this is more on just gaining career capital. So and also gaining a lot of gaining a lot of good life experience, and also gaining financial capabilities. So for example, I have friends who studied in universities abroad, especially in the US. And because of that, they're able to work in the US, and they're just earning a huge amount of money as fresh grads in the US. And then once they move to the Philippines, their savings from the US is just worth a lot. And then they could then donate this locally. And then just having that foreign work experience is good career capital. But yeah, so it's mostly on the career capital and the financial side. If you're aiming to make a high impact directly, then yeah, staying here works. Regarding Mindanao, um, Tanya would know about this more, but I feel like you don't really have to move there to make an impact. There's a lot of charities with where you can take a more strategic or administrative or operations roles here in Manila, and then just coordinate with people there. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Next question. What are your tips for those who are entering a career path from scratch, i.e., have no skill set yet in their career plan of interest?
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, when I started in 2015, 2016, like I didn't have any skills in UI UX design. And so it's just really trying to immerse yourself in all these resources for a certain career path, and also trying to build a portfolio or a branding on social media, on Facebook and LinkedIn, that, okay, you're the person to go to for this type of work. So I think easily in just by taking an online course in from 1 to 3 months, you could easily build enough skills that you could then like be the one posting, oh, I did this data visualization for COVID cases in the Philippines, or I did this design project for a contact tracing app. And I think posting a lot on Facebook and LinkedIn helps. I'd especially want to highlight LinkedIn, because that's just a way to make a lot of connections and also build a strong professional profile to yourself.
Yeah, great tips. Thanks, Brian. I think we have time for maybe two more questions. So first, can you explain a little further counterfactual impact, what it is, and what it means?
Yeah. So yeah, counterfactual impact is more on um, what is the impact you did minus what was the impact that would have happened if you didn't do what you do. So in the restaurant example, it's like, okay, I think that I started a restaurant that created 200 jobs, but then in the world that you didn't start the restaurant, the KFC would still be around, or other restaurants would still be around, and those 200 jobs would likely still be, those 200 people you employed would likely still have other jobs. So it's just like trying to see what's the impact that I caused because I did this rather than another person doing the same thing, something like that. I hope that's clear. Yeah.
If you want to learn more about that, you can also look that up later. But next question, how do we find the balance between personal interests and fit for the career, considering others may have more impact than us? So I guess it also relates to the previous question a little bit, but if you can expand further.
Sorry, so balancing, you mean impact and interest? Is that the balance between fit and impact?
Yes, I think my understanding of this question is that if one has, for example, a career that they are interested in, but then they might not be as fit for it because someone might be more fit for it and have more impact. How do you find the balance between that? I hope I understood that question.
I see. Yeah. So I think, yeah, even though counterfactual impact makes things tricky, I think once you land a specific job, you should feel quite happy and congratulate yourself. Like, okay, the recruiters thought you were the best person to land this internship or job, and hopefully you can just spend your 40 hours a week trying to be good at that job. And of course, if you have to work longer hours or spend time outside of that improving, that's fine. But yeah, don't try to like worry too much about, oh, if someone else were in this role, they would be doing better. You could definitely explore personal interests, and hopefully maybe there's ways to that, okay, those personal interests also make you better somehow in your career.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you for that, Brian.